Well, this is going to be our first tips and tricks of 2023. This is number 1. My name is Ryan Wunderlich. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Wunderlich. I have over 36 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. To give myself a little dating, my first version was 2.5. So that should tell you how long I've been doing AutoCAD. I'm currently one of our senior support specialists here in the Solutions Center. So if you have a contract with us and you have a CAD problem and you submit a ticket, chances are you're going to be talking to me. I've taught AutoCAD as a certified instructor before. I've had over 15 years in CAD management, 8 years in cruise ship building, 5 years in civil survey, landscape architecture. And I've worked in mechanical design, electromechanical, printed circuit board, and schematic design, architectural and acoustic design, as well as doing equipment layouts in industrial spaces. So, as I usually tell people jokingly, is the only thing I haven't done is aerospace and automotive, but I've touched just about everything else. And I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about eTransmit, we're going to talk about the basics, and we're going to talk about the advanced functions. And I did not set do not disturb, pardon me. And then we're going to talk about migrating settings to a newer version. This one is a big one, and we're going to talk about the workflow and the best practices. Those of you who are on the bleeding edge and you keep, as soon as the new versions come out, you immediately install them and kick the tires and things like that. We're going to talk about how to migrate your settings from your existing forward. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about and things that people do incorrectly that cause you problems. So what is eTransmit? So eTransmit is a function that's built into all AutoCAD-based products, including AutoCAD LT, and allows you to package and deliver groups of drawings and related supporting files in an electronic transmittal package, and they can either be created as a file folder or a zip file. And due to security concerns, the eTransmit feature no longer supports the creation of self-extracting executables. So you used to, years ago, you used to be able to create an exe that would unzip all the files. Due to security concerns, especially in most organizations, we don't do that anymore. Autodesk took that feature out because it was causing too many problems. And you can't add passwords to zip files via eTransmit, but you can definitely open them up in other zip programs to create them. So here's where we launch it from. We go into the ribbon and we go click on the red A, we go down to publish, and then we click on eTransmit. If you have the old style drop-down menu, Beru, yes, this is the old pack and go from year 2000. And I cannot comment on your other question regarding when is LT 2024 coming out. I cannot comment on that. We don't know. That's the easiest way to say it. Historically, sometime in the next month or 2 is generally when the new product's released. That's about the most vague I can give you for an answer. So old style menus, you go to File, there's eTransmit, and you can also type in just eTransmit into the command line. Now we're going to look at the main screen you get. So this is going to be the main screen that you see. This is the drawing we're actually going to be in. And in this screen, you can see the main drawing I was in, base drawing, and we have areas to add additional drawings. So if I want to add additional drawings to here, I can click Add and add more drawings. I can view the transmittal report, which is the green, which is going to tell me these are all the things that are going to be included. And then you've got a button here for transmittal setups, and we're going to talk about that later. That's the advanced functions. At this point, I can just simply hit OK, and it will ask me for a location, create a zip file with the files in it. So with the out-of-the-box settings, all of the paths are left intact. So here's my out-of-the-box zip, and these are where all of these things are located, and this is how it does it. And all of the XREFs were updated to relative paths, so they get // instead of having the full C working data webinars, etc. And one of the big things is that overlay external references did not come across. So you will have to manually add them using that File Transmit button. And what I mean by that is that if and I will show this to you right now because I have my base file open, right? If I go into XREF, I see I am in my base drawing, and this is XREF1 right here. And then my XREF1 has the cyan text, and it has the magenta text. Now, if I go into XREF1 here, you'll see that I have an attach and an overlay XREF. So this is what XREF1 actually looks like. So I just want to make sure that you understand that only what you see in the XREF tree here is what gets added to your eTransmit. It's not going to grab any of the other files. It's not going to grab any overlays that were attached to XREF1 because it's only going to get this list. So I just wanted to make sure we all understood that. Okay. And then you'll see that there are other things like you can have it capture fonts, you can have it capture a number of other things. And this is Reference Manager. So now we're going to talk about advanced functionality. This is where we can do things, and this is what's so important. So in the support side, when we ask you to do an eTransmit, we want you to flatten everything to a single directory. And this is where we do it under that advanced transmittal setup right here. So I will create a new or I can either modify or I'll create a new one, and I usually create a new one. And then this is where we can change options. So I can change the package type up here from zip to a folder. I can change the file format. So in other words, I can keep the existing formats, and this is what we're going to talk about in just a minute. I can, how it path, this is the big one. So I can do a lot of this stuff here. And this pathing options is use an organized folder structure, or what I like to do is place all files in one folder. So you get one zip that has all, you cannot make an RAR, you can only make a zip. But if you have WinRAR, you can unpack the files from the zip and recreate it as an RAR. And if I want to add additional files or extra steps, so we're going to talk about each one of these. So that file format piece here specifies the file format which all drawings included in the transmittal package will be converted to. So if I'm using 2023 and I have a file that was XREF'd in that's version 2020, or not 2020, let's say it has an XREF that I haven't touched since version 2000, when I will create this eTransmit, it will open up that file and it will resave it as a 2000. Why all in one folder, James? The reason why we like this in support is so that we don't have multiple folders we have to dig through to find XREFs. It makes it much easier for us to find all of the files. And so when we're doing troubleshooting for files, it makes it very easy to go through and figure out which file is the broken one. So when you're in AutoCAD Architecture, MEP, and Civil 3D, you will see options to explode the AEC entities here in that drop-down. Or if you have an object enabler installed, so if I have the Civil 3D object enabler installed in AutoCAD and I open up a Civil 3D drawing, I will also have these options. So it will open up, when it recreates this, it will put everything together and it will explode all of my civil objects into AutoCAD geometry, or all of my MEP objects, or all of my AutoCAD architecture objects, things like that. So the maintain visual fidelity for annotative objects. This is a big one right here. What about Plant 3D? Doesn't it export to AutoCAD when using? Yes, when you export to AutoCAD, you can do that. But the reason why I want to show you this is if you're using XREFs or you have multiple linked files that are part of your plant file, when you do the export to CAD, you are only exporting that drawing. You're not exporting any of the XREFs. If I'm doing an eTransmit, I can explode all of the AEC objects in all of the drawings, Valerie. So this maintain visual fidelity for annotative objects specifies whether or not drawings are saved with scale representations for annotative objects. What this means is that if you're saving to a format that is 2007 and older, so the 2007, 2004, and 2000 format, and you've got annotative objects, it's going to create new layers for every annotation scale that you have assigned to those objects and put that particular exploded annotation on that layer. So you would have a layer for 1/4 inch equals a foot, 1/2 inch equals a foot, or in the civil world, you'd have 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 30, etc., all on layers where those annotations, so the 1 to 20 annotation would be moved to the 1 to 20 annotation layer. And again, because 2007 and older doesn't support annotative objects, that's what we want to do. Otherwise, if you uncheck this maintain visual fidelity, what it's going to do is whatever visual scale or whatever annotation scale you have it set to, that's exactly what it's going to export and not give you any of the other scales. So that's an important piece to know there. So your Transmittal file folder is going to specify the location in which the Transmittal package is created. In other words, the zip file, it's going to create it here in my Working Data Webinars folder. I have it prompt me for a file name. You can have it not prompt you for a file name and just use whatever. And if this field is left unchanged, the transmitted file is created containing the first specified drawing file. In a sheet set context, the transmittal file is created in the folder containing the sheet set DST file. This is not applicable to AutoCAD LT. Just know that AutoCAD LT doesn't do eTransmit with sheet sets. But if you just open up a sheet set, you can eTransmit that sheet set and it will create this here. If you don't prompt for a file name or a file folder, it will create it where the DST is. And then this is that organized folder structure. This is what I like. So uses organized folder structure, duplicates the file structure for the files being transmitted. The root folder is the top level folder with the hierarchical folder tree. These are the following considerations that apply. And this is why we like it all in one. So relative paths remain unchanged. Relative paths outside the source root folder retain up to one level of the folder path above them and are placed in the root folder. Full absolute paths within the root folder tree are converted to relatives. Full paths outside the source root folder retain up to one level of the folder path above them and are placed in the root folder. And then full paths outside are converted to no path and are moved to the root folder. So reason why, if you keep this organized folder structure and you are pulling in XREF from multiple directories that are not subdirectories of where the drawing is, you're going to create a lot of extra work for AutoCAD, which is why I like to just throw everything in one folder. And you can it will create other folders in here like fonts or plot configurations. So this will capture any of your TrueType fonts and your SHX fonts. This will also capture your plot configurations. So it'll capture your PC3 files, your CTB files, etc. And the sheet sets folder is created to hold all the support files for sheet sets if necessary. The sheet set data DST, however, is placed in the root folder. It's again not applicable to LT. This option is not available if the transmittal package is saved to an internet location. What I mean by that is that if you're in Autodesk Docs, if you're in SharePoint, if you're in OneDrive, if you're in BIM 360, and you open up a sheet set that way and get the lightweight sheet set manager, you cannot create the transmittal package to include a sheet set. Just understand that that is a problem right now. So if you guys have been moving toward 2023 or 2022 with the updates, so you have that sheet set manager light that works in BIM 360 or works in Autodesk Docs, you still can't create the sheet set here in your eTransmittal. Again, the source root folder defines the root source or source root folder for relative paths of drawing dependent. The source root folder also contains sheet set data, a DST file when the sheet set is transmitted. Again, AutoCAD LT does not handle this. Place all files in one folder. This is my preferred. So all the files are installed to a single specified target folder when the transmittal package is installed or created, and then keep files as is. Preserves the folder structure of all files in the transmittal package. facilitating ease of installation on another system. So what this will do is it will, if you say keep files and folders as is, this will retain all of the path information. And if you unpack it on somebody's machine, it will replicate all those paths and create all those folders, etc. So just be aware that you want to use the first or the second option, and I like the second option. This is my preferred because it sticks everything in a single folder, makes it much easier for me to figure out what drawing is what. Send email. You can have it automatically create your zip file and immediately launch your email application and attach it to your email. Set default plotter to none. This again is one of my preferred settings, and what it will do is it will open up and change your preferred plotter to none. I can't tell you how many times I've opened up drawings where it says you don't have this, you don't have this printer, you don't have this plotter, etc. Thomas, yes, there will be a handout of there will be a PDF of my slides when I'm done. I will get this over to Lori. You can email her and she will send it to you. So this is my preferred because your local printer plotter settings are usually not relevant to the recipient. And this means that when they go to plot something, they get to select their own thing as opposed to it screaming at them that it can't find something. Bind external references. This is just like going to the XREF dialog to bind or insert. You can either bind the selected external references into the current drawing, or you can insert them into the current drawing. So either insert like you're inserting a block, or bind them like the bind process. These are here. And then purge drawings. Perform the purge operation on each of the specified drawings to reduce file size if possible. Now, the purge is done in silent mode. You will not receive any notifications when the purged items and what has been removed and when they've been removed. Tip, generally speaking, I like to have my drawings clean, so I don't ever use this because I've already purged my drawings before I send it to somebody. Include fonts. This will include any associated TrueType and SHX fonts with the title package. Audit, you've got to do manually. Now, I want to be careful here is that some TrueType fonts are proprietary, and if you're not sure whether or not the recipient owns the rights to the TrueType font, clear this option. If any required TrueType fonts are not available to the recipient, the font specified by the font alt system variable will be substituted. So if any of your companies have created their own TrueType font that is specific to them, you do not want to be including fonts when you send it to the customer because you're giving them your font. Same with SHX. If you guys have a specific SHX that you've spent the time creating and it's specific to your organization, don't send it. Include textures from materials. So this is important mostly for our architect people out there. If you've included textures and materials on your walls, windows, doors, you definitely want to include those materials so that whoever is looking at your drawings has your same materials. And you can include files from data link like Excel files. So if you've done the data link process and you've attached Excel files, it will include them. Photometric web files. So these are associated with web lights in the drawings, and include unloaded reference files. If you have this unchecked, only the loaded XREFs in the drawing at the time that you run the eTransmit is what's included. Otherwise, it will ignore all unloaded XREFs. Right, so this is my preferred eTransmit setup. This is my basic AutoCAD and non-AEC verticals, makes a single zip file, places all the files in a single folder. Right here, I set the plotter to none, and I don't include any of the additional fluff other than purge drawings. Okay, for the AEC verticals, is there no option for which kind of font to attach, correct? I will show you this. I'm gonna probably mangle your name, but it might be Noemi. You can actually see what files it's going to attach, and you can uncheck those. So if you aren't sure if you should include a font, you can actually uncheck it and it won't be part of that. And then for any of the verticals, and especially if I'm in AutoCAD and I'm working in a drawing, I will actually have one that's set up to explode my AEC objects when I create this, so I know which one to do. And wow, we are running fast. So let's get in here, right? So we're gonna come in here, and I'm just gonna come up here, and I'm gonna do my eTransmit. So again, I go Publish, eTransmit. It will always prompt you to save. I opened up the drawing. I haven't done any work, so I'm gonna hit No here. And this is what you're gonna see. So these are what's included. So my external references. So if I hit OK from here, I am going to get this particular zip file. This is my out-of-the-box configuration. And you'll see I have my base drawing, and then I have my XREF1 and my XREF1.2, etc. So everything has folder structure, things like that. So the first thing I usually do will come in here and I will create Transmittal setup, and I will create a new one. And this will be my preferred setup name. It's going to be based on standard, and I'm going to hit continue. And again, I'm going to keep the existing file formats. I'm going to place all the things in one. I'm going to set my plotter to none, purge, and I'm unchecking all my fluff. So now I have my preferred. And again, this is what's here. So if I come back into, let's say, standard, I forgot I had modified my standard. If I say include fonts, now you're going to see my font show up. So here's my font map. Here's my compiled shape font that's being used as simplex, and here's the true type font. All I would need to do would be to uncheck those boxes here. And when I hit OK, it will not include the unchecked items. Okay, I find it's much easier to just come in here and modify this and just turn off the fonts to begin with. That way I don't get them. And I'm not sending extra garbage that doesn't need to be there. So if I come back into my transmittal setup and I modify, right, and I say include, I haven't set up these to plot at all, which is why it's not giving me any plot configuration data, but it can show up, right? So if I close, cancel out of this, right, let's go to my layout and I'll go to plot, and I will just set DWG to PC, DWG to PDF, and I will set this to my monochrome, apply to layout, right there, and cancel. Now when I go to eTransmit, see, here's my PC3, and here's my CTB. And then if I go Transmittal Setups and I modify this and I set my default plotter to none, what it's going to do is that it's still going to include these two pieces because that is part of one of the layouts, but it will set this page to none that I'm in here. So if I don't want to send them my PC3, I just uncheck it. If I do want to send my plot table, check it, otherwise uncheck it. Under Actions and Modify Transmittal Setup, you have removed design feed. What version are you on, Karen? You're on LT 2018. So the design feed is something that's been abandoned by Autodesk. You used to have a design feed. I would go ahead and uncheck that option because what it is that you've got a design feed in LT 2018 where you can get information from there. Typically just remove that. That's what it is. It's an older thing. It's no longer being used, which is why you don't see it in 2023. Right? So if I do my preferred and it's set up exactly like this, and I did this so that we didn't have to wait for me to let these generate. This is my preferred settings to flatten all the paths out. Here's all my drawings. They're all in one directory, and I did include the fonts here so you can see that my Arial and my Simplex both came in. And then I have my drawing.txt. This text file here, if you open it, actually will show you the Transmittal report. So I created this on January 10th. Here's the root drawing. Here's my external references that were included. Here's my font map, my confiled shapes, notes for distribution. Please copy these fonts here. The true type fonts must be registered to the operating system. So it gives you a lot of information here. Alex Schmidt, excellent. If you don't include specialized fonts, won't the user on the receiving end have issues with viewing the text? Or will it default to another font that they have? It will default to another font they have, and it will usually default in your options under, it is text editor here, alternative font file. So for me, if I don't have your SXX or TrueType font, it will default to Simplex. That's part of your options. You can set this up any way you want. You can always send them your specialized fonts. Just understand that you run the risk of, if your company paid to have that font created for them and it's a trademark or a proprietary font for your company, and you send it to another company, you've lost control of it. So just, it's more of a be aware. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. Just be aware that you can have issues doing that. Right, so we covered a lot of information on this eTransmit and how important it is to come in here and set this up. So let me come back to AutoCAD because I want to show you the other piece of this, right? So you'll see this drawing was started in AutoCAD. It was eTransmit. And you'll see here under my Transmittal setups, even if I go preferred and I modify my preferred, you'll see I opened up a drawing in my drawing session that's a civil drawing. And you'll see I have the ability now to explode AEC objects. So I like to have one here that's set up to export drawings with exploded AEC. This is another thing, I actually covered this in a blog, but if you are in basic AutoCAD and you get Civil 3D files or other files that are giving you problems, things aren't displaying right, things are, you turn layers on or off that you think and things are not turning on or off, and you really need it to work like a regular AutoCAD drawing. And this is a bonus item for this. As long as you have an object enabler installed, you can type in -export to AutoCAD in the command line, and it's got to be with the export. And basically you hit enter through all of these things and it will be, it's the same, everything with electrical. Yes, everything is AutoCAD based. All of your eTransmit is going to look and act exactly the same. With this export to AutoCAD here, I can hit enter through this, and if there were AEC objects in here, it would explode them into basic CAD geometry, and then I could use my exploded drawing. So essentially it does the same thing as export to AutoCAD if you're in vanilla AutoCAD or basic AutoCAD with an object enabler installed. All right, so now survey points do not explode with eTransmit exports. Jeffrey, hang on just a second. Anna, the command is -export to AutoCAD, all one word, -sign export to AutoCAD. Survey points do not explode with eTransmit exports if your points are locked. If you unlock the points, they will explode. It's been a defect in past versions. And as a matter of fact, that defect even occurred when you just did the standard export to AutoCAD inside of Civil 3D if you had locked points. And I believe they corrected that in 20 or 21. So now we're going to talk about the big important one, right? Migrating settings to a newer version. So how many of you see this migrate custom settings after you install a new version? And you just either click the check mark and just move on. Okay. Yeah, most of you do. What I want to point out to you is this box right here that allows you to migrate your QE, your CUI. This is going to be what is going to cause your AutoCAD to misbehave heavily. AutoCAD LT, AutoCAD architecture, and Civil 3D are really notorious. Well, you can't ever migrate Civil 3D forward or map, but AutoCAD architecture, MEP, and some of the others, if you migrate this CUI forward, what you're doing is you're taking the CUI from whatever version of AutoCAD it is, and you're replacing the newer CUI with the old one. And what I tell people, if you use the Migrate settings, always make sure you uncheck the CUI box. Your user profile is going to come across, your workspace, everything how you're used to it, but you're going to have the current CUI, which stands for Customized User Interface, instead of the older version. If I'm in AutoCAD Architecture 23 and I migrate AutoCAD Architecture 2018 forward to 2023 and I have this QE box checked, I can guarantee you AutoCAD Architecture is going to crash or run abysmally slow or give me a lot of unrecognized commands or unknown commands when I try to do stuff off the ribbons. Okay, just be warned. How many of you use previous ARG files to set up a new version? Right? So if you're taking an ARG file of a profile from an old version and you're migrating it forward to a new version, you can have unintended consequences too, because we'll talk about the ARG and what's specific about it. This is only for migrating settings from an old to a new version on the same computer. Migrating settings from an old version on an older laptop to a new version on a new laptop. Steve, there's no easy button for that. That's a process. What you could do is you could install the new version on the old computer, migrate your settings there, and then import, export the settings to the new laptop. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, Steve, so hold on. And then either of these methods can cause future issues. So I generally avoid both of these. I'm a big fan of starting over every time I get a new version. So here's what I do. If I'm going to a newer version, I install my product, I recreate your settings. Yes, I hear you groaning already, right? Because you don't want to do that. Thomas, we'll talk about how you're going to have to reset that in just a minute. So I recreate my settings. The reason why is that I want you, it gives me an opportunity to test any outside third-party apps, any custom programming, and confirm it works before going live. It lets you set the base standard for every machine that we'll start with. It lets you refamiliarize yourself with your custom standards or document them if you don't already have it done. Right? How many of you have documentation regarding setting up AutoCAD that is more than 3 years old and was done on a much older version? Okay. You want to make sure that you always refamiliarize yourself and update your standards and update your setup with every new version so that you have this stuff. Okay. Then you harvest the new ARG file and use that. And then we can use import and export profiles to make the new installs look exactly the same as the base machine. And we're going to talk about that. So this is how I like to migrate to a newer version. So we're going to discuss side items. So what is an ARG file? Because everyone asks me, well, what is this? It's called an Autodesk argument. Essentially what it is it's nothing more than a super spiffy registry file. And because that ARG is applying changes to your registry, if you have incorrect or there's missing a word here. Wow. Okay, it should be incorrect or wrong values in the Windows registry that do not have corresponding programs or entries can cause issues in the program. And this is why reusing the same ARG from older versions is prone to leave you with issues. So I believe that in here, hang on just a second, I'm going to open up one of these ARGs. And I'm going to show you what an ARG actually is. Right? Here's a good example. So this is a company that I was doing work with that's Civil 3D. Their profile that they sent me is their current, quote unquote, current for 2019. And I went in here and there's actually data that references their old Infrastructure Design Suite Premium 2015. And there are multiple entries in here where we can see, and I asked them about this, where you can see that information in here, some of these MRUs don't matter, but where it matters is we get into some of the MRU stands for most recently used file, but I can come in here and I can find that my tool palette paths here are pointed to a 2015 directory. They've since moved on, but they couldn't figure out why they were having trouble. And then there was some other stuff in here where I could see that they were referencing right here, pipe networks. So AEC pressure pipes 100, and they're referencing an old 2015 pressure pipe catalog. Now this piece is in the registry. This is not actually the current pressure pipes. 130 is the current. This is a holdover from that, but it keeps adding it in there and they keep having problems. So I just want to make you aware, this is what you're adding when you reuse those old ARGs on newer products. You can intentionally be causing this information to be added to the registry. As an example of that, I had a client who was having significant issues with their Civil 3D, and their ARG file dated from Civil 3D 2011, and they had carried it forward. And when I just went in and exported out just the profile as out of the registry, it was 4 times the size of the out of the box one. And there were multiple things that no longer applied because the programming has obviously changed and moved. After we reset the settings back to the default and rebuilt it correctly, it worked like a champ. So reusing that same ARG file, I can't stress this enough, don't do it unless you absolutely have to. I always tell people, if you're going to a new version, make a new one. So how to create a new profile. This is this ARG right here. You launch AutoCAD or LT or the vertical. How do you fix it again? Do you reinstall? Nope, we'll talk about that. Noemi, talk about that. So we type in options. And when we talk about that, this is the same thing, Thomas, that we're going to talk about how we reset things back to the default so that you can go through and fix it the right way. We type in options to get to the AutoCAD options. We navigate to the Profiles tab and we click Add to List. Whatever I highlight here is what it's going to clone. Then I give it a name, like my custom profile or something like that, or your custom profile, your company name and product year, something that identifies it very easily to you. We highlight that profile that we just created. We hit Set Current. Now we make all the changes to any of our support paths, any other adjustments, any changes to system variables we need, and we click OK to save our changes. Once we're finished, we close AutoCAD. We reopen it to confirm that all of the changes were kept. This is going to be important to understand when we're dealing with verticals. So you may need to create a new icon that references your new profile so that when you launch it from that icon, it gives you all of your settings. Once now we're just talking about basic AutoCAD. So you close it, you reopen it. We go back to Options Profiles tab, highlight the profile we made. We select Export to create an ARG for other machines. To apply this we open up the other machine's AutoCAD. We go into Options, Profiles tab. We select Import. We select the ARG we just made. We import it. We highlight the imported profile, set current, and hit OK. Close, reopen, make sure everything's there. Now, how to export and import a known good profile. So this is how we take information and go from same version to same version to same version across machines. So you get your one machine set up exactly how you want, right? You've tested all of your functions. You close AutoCAD. We launch the export settings here. We create a zip file, and I usually recommend unchecking the include custom files box. And the reason, or custom network files. And the reason why is that if you reference a bunch of stuff on the network, every time that you apply this, it's going to want to overwrite it. It will remember that you're looking at that drive, but it's not going to. How do you avoid the user specified path to the C drive in your argument file? It depends on how you're creating stuff. Most of the stuff in your registry is actually going to be % user profile %, unless somebody specifically goes outside of their user profile, Melissa. And that's most of the user specified paths should, unless you've done something wrong in creating it, most of it should come in as % user profile % or % program files %. So it's not going to be localized to any specific user. And if you're having trouble with that, we can help. I can help. So we launch the export settings, we launch AutoCAD, and then once we create the zip file, and I'll show you this box here in just a second, we launch AutoCAD, we close it on the machine you want to apply it to because we have to launch it one time to populate it. Then we go in, we find our import settings, we locate the zip file you made, import the settings, launch AutoCAD, and it will be configured exactly as the machine you exported from. Everything. We're talking colors of the background, colors of the crosshairs, size of the crosshairs, all your system variables. This is more extensive than doing just an ARG file, because the ARG file only captures some of this or most of the user specific information for that profile, but it doesn't capture everything. This captures everything. Now I'll do a demonstration. What's the difference between that and just pointing a path in the Profiles tab as opposed to zipping? Is the export settings from Windows or from AutoCAD? It's from AutoCAD, and I'm not sure, Kenneth, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but we'll go through this. So we come in here and I go into my options. I go into my profiles and I say add to list, and I say, you know, my custom. I click on it, I set it current. It's set to my custom profile up here. Now I can make changes to any of this information. So I can remove my list routines here. I can remove my custom locations. I can add all this stuff. When I'm done, I come back to I hit OK. I close AutoCAD. I reopen it to make sure all of my settings were saved. Then I go back into options, and then I export this out as an ARG, and this would be, you know, right, my custom settings. And then in here, where I just exported it to, here's my custom settings.arg, and I can open this, and you'll see I was in the drafting and annotation tab, and this is my profile name, my custom, and this was all of my settings. Okay, this is just the ARG file. So now I'm going to show you the other piece of this. So if I close this, right, here's my Civil 3D alignments. Okay, I have no version of AutoCAD open at this point. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to AutoCAD, and I'm going to now export my AutoCAD 2023 settings. I do not have AutoCAD still running. Well, apparently I do. Okay, AutoCAD's got to be fully closed. We come in here, well, not my architecture, and I want to export my AutoCAD settings. Include custom files from network locations. Again, I will typically uncheck this. Where is the command line shape and position saved in? Is it in the ARG or in the workspace? Lynette, that's actually a very good question. It's actually not stored in either of those, and I can show you where it's actually stored. So I'm going to export this. This is my custom settings right here. I hit save. All right, and it's going to chug away. And it's going to tell me here, my migration package was successfully saved. So now we're going to go look at this really spiffy file. And what this is this becomes a super specialized zip file. Now you cannot view this with standard Windows. You have to use 7-zip or an expansive one. And when I open up the archive, here's what's being saved in here. Those two items are not visible in my start menus. They are not separately installed. I will show you just a second why that is, James, just bear with me. So here's my working data folder, raw. Here's my Lisp routines, right? Because it remembered that path and it needed to get this line type because that's how I have it set. I've got my fonts because I am pointing to a font directory that has 1,300 fonts in it in my AutoCAD, so it grabbed all of those. Again, this was all local. Under my users, here's my username, app data, roaming, Autodesk, AutoCAD 2023, ENU, right? Here's my support. So here's my tool palettes, here's my profiles, there's my custom profile and the standard out-of-the-box unnamed profile that has been modified. And here's all of the modified files. So I have modified my ACAD QE, my LIN, my PGP, my PAT. So if I make changes to my PGP file or my aliases, it will be saved in here, and then I can put this on any machine, and any machine that I go through the process of going through, come on, and we go into AutoCAD 2023, and I import these settings here. Whatever you saw on my screen is exactly what they're going to see. The whole thing. So you're talking about those two items not being visible. Can you export from Civil 3D 2023? Yes, you can, but you have to make your own icons. So, bear with me. So you cannot import and export settings from Map or Civil 3D. However, there's a blog right here that I wrote years ago on how to make that happen. So let's get back to you, James. So when we come in here, if you do not see those icons here, right mouse click on AutoCAD 2023, go to More, go to Open File Location, and see if you have this Migrate Custom Settings folder here. And in there would be your import, export, and migrate. And if you were installed from a deployment, these can be removed from the deployment, and we can always restore them, or we can create our own. There's another piece in this. If you've happened to have issues with your AutoCAD and you know you've migrated your CUI forward from an older version, there's a reset settings to default right here. If I run this, it's going to ask me, do I want to back up my existing settings? And I can back them up. And then it will return my AutoCAD to a state as if I had just installed it. Those of you who deal with Civil 3D and find out that Civil 3D profiles tend to corrupt fairly regularly, this reset settings to default is what I do all the time as one of my troubleshooting steps, and it does work. A lot of times, nope, none of these actions require any full admin permissions. I can run these on a standard user set of permissions because you're not technically installing or uninstalling anything. All right. So that was a lot of good questions. All right. Jeffrey, now I'm going to get back to you. You have a file in AutoCAD Lite that you think is an artist palette. It has various shapes, text boxes, etc. You're having trouble with your cue leaders or quick leaders. It seems like over time the text breaks away from the arrows seemingly without rhyme or reason. Depending on how you're pasting and depending on what version you're using, you may need to be looking at perhaps upgrading those, recreating them in a newer version, or not using cut and paste. Or you may have something else going on. If you explode it, they'll detach. If you have a quick leader that is actually tied to an entity and you're pasting it to something that doesn't have an entity, it can break. There's a lot of things that potentially could happen with that. That's a little aside. I just wanted to make sure I did answer your question. All right. James, were you able to find this Migrate custom settings? Yep. If you've already migrated the CUI, how can this be undone? You have to come back in and reset your settings back to the default. All right, and if you don't have those, James, if you're an Imaginate customer, send an email to support@rand.com. We can create these. You will always have this AD migrator function right here. And all we're talking about is doing eProduct AutoCAD language ENUS. Yep. So they may have disabled it from the deployment, but you can create these yourself if you need to. Right, so this would be, actually, let me respond specifically to you. There, okay, that would be for the export. Whoops, and David, I sent it to you by accident. There, sorry about that. Sorry, James, that's your import. And then we change the letter to E, and that's your export shortcut. If you create those two shortcuts, just like that, you should have the ability to do your import and export like that. And again, if you've migrated your QE and you have issues, come back in here, find whatever program you have, reset settings to default. All of your Autodesk programs should include that. So here's my 18. I can reset 18 to default. 19 has a reset settings. Architecture has a reset settings. Oh, look at that. Electrical has a reset settings. LT has a reset settings. Map has a reset settings. Mechanical reset, MEP. All of your AutoCAD based programs should have a reset settings back to the defaults. So if you've made that mistake and migrated the QE and you have some issues, by all means, reset your settings back to default and then rebuild it. That's the best advice I can give you. And I run into this a lot where people have migrated stuff forward, and I will literally come into here, right? I will open up AutoCAD and I will go into their QE editor and I will see drafting and annotation migrated from 2013, migrated from 2014, migrated from 2015, migrated from 2016, and I will see all of those workspaces. And so we want to clean some of that up. All right. You guys have been giving me a lot of questions. So our next webinar is April 20th.
Please, Ryan, thank you so much. And I'm pretty darn sure we're going to see everybody in April. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.